I cannot commence the writing on the otherness, the monstrous, the body and skin as the phenomenon of bodily otherness. All I can do is write beside, graft to the existing aggregates of knowledge, in Hegel's words, of normative scientific production. In other words, Hegel begins his Phenomenology of Spirit with famous introduction in which he investigates the sole function of the preface as such. At the beginning, Hegel determines the form of introduction as excessive, inappropriate, and out of place. The introduction was written several months after the book itself. The question Hegel sets in front of us is crucial. Is it possible to write an introduction to any philosophical text? Can we write about a philosophical text after the text has been written in a different language and within a different order, that is, the order that isn't philosophical anymore? Can one write on philosophy in a non-philosophical way? On the other side, how can one write an introduction to some text whose dialectics of becoming is so complex that any analytical prologue would be stagnant and wouldn't be able to show the processes and ways of dealing with the concepts and drawing conclusions, as if they exist independently from the particular work on the conceptualization and deduction? Hegel's foreword is indeed an afterword, one of the most remarkable in the history of philosophy, as if Hegel, from the other side of his philosophical system, is initiating us into the secret of the introduction, into some additional contradictory effects of the prelude to the text of philosophy. Can we think of the epilogue as a certain determined, delayed politics of the textual, in which the text itself is to be silenced and its potentialities elaborated and strictly controlled? I will argue that the foreword or afterword exists in order to legitimize and enable the scientific textuality, its methods, or the hazardous intermix of methods, its ends, contributions, and uncanny end plays. In relation to the epistemological and political aggregation on the horizon of knowledge within which the monstrous other resides, as a fixed and formed figure, writing on the otherness would mean that one has to do the demanding work of paleonymy, to dig out and preserve corpuses of words entombed in ancient and contemporary structures of knowledge and in political structures as well. In his book Dissemination, Derrida, in his extra text, is dealing with the future past, recognizing the uncanny temporality of introduction. As Hegel did before him, Derrida asks the same dangerous question: does the foreword exist? Isn't it the case that every introduction is at the same time inside and outside in relation to the content it represents? Isn't every prologue at the same time before and after the text? Isn't it bifacial and hybrid? If we state that the introduction is futile, unavoidable, but impossible at the same time, we are immediately faced with the conclusion that the very form of foreword reveals the erosion in the monolithic content structure, a crack in the grandiose giant body of philosophical text. Who needs an introduction after all? Who needs this book, or any book at all? Complex mutuality and competitions between the text and the before and after the text surely draw our attention to the necessity of scientific and ideological, disciplinary and discursive positioning that intends to obtain the legitimacy for this complex relationship. Hence, with all the conceptual predicaments of a foreword that is always already an afterword, and with the hopefully productive illusion that I can perform double reading and double writing that lies at the heart of the construction, this book intends to occupy a generic place of an epilogue, a postscriptum. With that in mind, with this postscriptum, I won't be establishing and producing new knowledge or new aggregates. To the contrary, my intention is to rewrite, unwrite, describe, erase, and dig in. I will try to show that the phenomenon of the otherness eludes linguistic formulations, but that the monster, skin and body obtain and temporalize marks. Hence, their otherness cannot be a mere object of analysis without setting limits to the analysis itself. Monsters, bodies, and skins indicate the diverseness and the political questionability of the production of limits and the politics of exclusion. The word scriptum preserved its ties to Proto-Indo-European root scrib, meaning to cut, to separate. Writing plays a part in cutting, through, off, in various forms of division and splitting, to write by cutting, by splitting, as a patchwork, within which every plane, every piece stands aside to the grafted totality. Furthermore, the notion of separation and cutting are the basic attributes and or risks of the skin. This text is always written, it was written, as a text of knowledge, text on skin, or a skin as a text to be read through and out. But outside of that text, and always outside or aside that text, the skin is a postscriptum that becomes after and beyond. In the same manner, the afterword to that text on skin, or text as such, is a foreword, that which announces itself as a written text, inasmuch a text, or what is left of the text, hence postscriptum. The so-called chapters of this book offer different readings, different approaches and retreats from the body of knowledge on politics of space, on skin, body, and the monstrous. My aim is to indicate the complexity of skin and its indefinite spatiality, as well as the immensurability of skin's extensions, the multiplicity of skin. The proposed sites of division and separation are actually knots, lesions, networks, and foldings, the sites of intensity and dodging that always require different entrances and exits, always another threshold, another kind of sensorium, different eyes, different ears, different skin, language, and with it all different touching. This postscriptum, devoid of any visible scriptum, represents a special economy of writing on monstrous otherness, on body and skin. That economy takes into account the knowledge of the other and or monstrous, the excessive burden of Western thought, and the knowledge on the skin as a momentous signifier of the body taken as the other. It will take into considerations the scenes and rhetorics of that knowledge. Or accordingly, this postscriptum does not stand outside those aggregates of knowledge, nor within them, but is a collapse, a falling down the abyss into the groundlessness of every knowledge, the opening of the bottomless depths of knowledge production. Between the one same and the other, the third, that is the skin, emerges. The skin touches upon both of these limits between inside and outside, and not only in between, but becoming in between as such, overflowing on both sides over and beyond the limits.